Welcome to Snail Story, where every tale takes its time, but always leads us back to something deeply real today. We invite you into a story that sounds like science fiction, but might just be truer than it seems. A tech millionaire thought he was in love until an 8-year-old girl, the child he adopted, whispered, "There's a camera in your office, but it's not yours." What began as an innocent warning uncovered an entire web of espionage led by the people closest to him. But what they found wasn't just the truth. It was a family built not by blood, but by trust. If you've ever lost faith in the world, we hope this story makes you smile, because somewhere out there, sincerity still exists. And don't forget to like and subscribe, so we can meet again next week in a story that moves slowly but always rings true. Lucas Callahan never imagined he'd become a father. He was the kind of man who programmed everything into systems, even emotions. And in that system, raising a child had never appeared in any category. But that girl Rowan stepped into his life quite literally on a rainy April afternoon. With eyes brighter than the computer screens Lucas stared at every day. Rowan had been living in an orphanage since she was 5. No one had adopted her, not because of illness, but because she was too different, quiet, unsmiling, withdrawn, and utterly absorbed in dismantling electronics, coding, or solving math puzzles no one else in the home could understand. Lucas first heard of Rohan when visiting a special care center for gifted children, one that SecureVest, his cybersecurity company, sponsored with annual scholarships. He had been invited to try out a puzzle game designed by the children. And while struggling with what seemed to be an impossible encryption, a dark-haired girl walked over, no greeting, no smile, and simply reversed the string of characters on his screen and said, "You're moving against the wave. Have to invert the vector to find the exit." That was all. And Lucas found the solution. He turned to look at her, eyes so intelligent it almost hurt to meet them, and a loneliness that had no words. After that visit, he asked the staff about her. They said her name was Rowan Delaney, 8 years old, a Q above 160, but no one wanted to adopt her because she was hard to approach, too silent and not like other kids. Lucas understood that feeling. He had once been that child, called strange, too rational, emotionless. And he knew loneliness wasn't the absence of people. It was having people near, yet feeling unseen. A few weeks later, Lucas filed for adoption, not because he wanted to be a father, but because, for the first time in years, he had seen someone who felt exactly like him. And he couldn't look away. 6 months later, they were living together in a sleek villa overlooking Tacoma Bay. Rowan liked to sit by the large, glass window where she could see both the ocean and the horizon, as if tracking invisible signals running through the world. Lucas remained busy with his work, managing SecureVest and preparing for an upcoming cybersecurity summit in London. Rowan, instead of playing with dolls or watching cartoons, dismantled alarm clocks, wrote code, and analyzed the electromagnetic waves around the house. He once teased, "What are you working on?" Rowan didn't look away from her screen. Security check. This is our home, after all. Lucas had smiled, but he didn't know that would be the last time he smiled with the illusion that he was still in control. That night, as Lucas reviewed his presentation slides, Rowan walked into the study. She stood silently for a while. Lucas looked up, surprised. He had clearly told everyone the room was off limits after 9 p.m., but Rowan wasn't looking at him. She was staring at a decorative pillow on the bookshelf, a gift from Clara, Lucas's girlfriend. Then Rowan stepped forward and gently tugged his sleeve. "Uncle Lucas, I need to tell you something. Please don't be mad." "Okay, go ahead." Rowan glanced around, as if the walls themselves might be listening. Then she leaned close and whispered, "That pillow, it talks. But not to me. It's sending something every night." Lucas froze. "Rowan, what did you say?" "I picked up the signal. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure. But it's happening every night now. I don't think you know. He laughed a bit stiffly. You sure you're not imagining it? You do like decrypting strange signals, but Rowan's gaze didn't waver in the soft glow of the desk lamp. She looked far older than her years, or like an ancient mind. Trapped in an 8-year-old body, Lucas looked again at the pillow Clara had given him, an innocent-looking item, embroidered with lavender flowers. He had never paid much attention to it. But suddenly, every gift Clara had brought, the digital photo frame, the vase, the nightlight flashed through his mind like a suspicious checklist. He swallowed and asked softly, "Do you have the data?" Rowan nodded. "It's on an encrypted drive. I'll show you in the morning." Lucas nodded, but he didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dark, staring at the pillow on the shelf, as if, somehow, it could stare right back at him. The next morning, Lucas woke up earlier than usual. He hadn't slept much. His mind kept circling back to Rowan's whisper, and that embroidered lavender pillow resting silently on the bookshelf. He didn't say a word during breakfast. Neither did Rowan. But after finishing her milk, she turned to him quietly. "Are you ready to see it now?" Lucas nodded. Rowan led him to the attic, a space she had turned into a secret lab, using discarded items from the garage. There were no windows, just soft yellow lighting, a whiteboard filled with cryptic symbols, and an old laptop modified with dual antennas and heat sensors. I used inverse Fourier transform algorithms to analyze the waves. Secure vests. Software is strong, but I detected a signal buried in the white noise frequency. It shows up precisely at 2:17 a.m. every night, lasting exactly 6 minutes and 14 seconds. She opened a graph. The screen displayed waveforms, fluctuating but clearly patterned. At first, I thought it was marine radar, but then I noticed repeating clusters like encryption. So I tried translating it into ASCII. Rowan clicked A. String of characters appeared on the screen. DSAK721 for a V10. Lucas furrowed his brow. That's a mid-tier encryption format from SecureVest's internal system. How do you even know that? I didn't, she replied. But it looked similar to the codes on the system map you usually have open during remote meetings. Clara was sitting beside you once when you were working, wasn't she? Lucas went still. He remembered it. Now the time Clara accidentally tapped the screen during a meeting and laughed. "Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to." He hadn't thought much of it back then. Just a curious girlfriend. But this wasn't curiosity anymore. "Do you know where the signal's coming from?" Lucas asked, his voice lower now. Rowan brought up a map of the house, marked with red dots. "These are the emission points: the embroidered pillow, the wall clock in the living room, the porcelain vase in the kitchen. Also a gift from Clara, the digital photo frame on your desk." A chill ran down Lucas's spine. All of them gifts from Clara in the past 2 months, and all placed in the most private corners of his home. He took a step back and leaned against the wall. Part of him didn't want to believe it, but he knew. Rowan never made things up, and the evidence was far too specific. "Is there more?" he asked. Rowan nodded. I traced the IP address the signals were being sent to. It's masked through 3 anonymous layers, but I found a lead. The server is located in Prague, Czech Republic. I haven't identified who's behind it yet, but it's definitely not random. Lucas sat down, fingers laced together. He remembered the times Clara had asked about his new projects, about the algorithms he was developing. So smooth, so casual, so well-timed, and always wrapped in genuine concern. And now he looked over at Rowan. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Rowan looked at him, not with blame, but with the calm detachment of a seasoned analyst. "Because I needed to be sure. You've been hurt before. I didn't want to say anything until I had real data. But last night, the signal got stronger. It's in its final phase. Lucas felt the chill creep down his back. He was a cybersecurity expert, and he had just been surveilled inside his own home, not through Wi-Fi, not through servers, but through personal objects, embedded with devices so sophisticated that they'd go undetected unless someone actively scanned the airwaves. And worst of all, the person behind it all might be someone he had once considered proposing to. An hour later, Lucas combed through the house's security systems, cross-referencing Rowan's data. The findings matched exactly. He unzipped the embroidered pillow. Inside the seam, hidden beneath delicate threads, was a small chip, affixed with thermal adhesive, just like the high-end spy devices currently being hunted by international agencies. Lucas placed the chip on the table, saying nothing. Rowan, still calmly seated, opened a different screen. One more thing. During the signal scans, I discovered a unique frequency. It only appears when Clara's home. The moment she leaves, the signal disappears. Lucas asked immediately, "What does she take with her?" Rowan tapped a key. Footage from the hallway. Camera popped up. Clara was carrying a small black pouch, the kind that looked harmless. But if it contained a data storage device, Lucas jumped to his feet. "We can't wait any longer." Rowan looked up. "What are you going to do?" Lucas clenched his fists. "Find someone we can trust. The three of us." A few hours later in the reading room, Lucas picked up the phone. "Edith, I need you back." "No one else. Just you." From the other end came the steady, experienced voice of an older woman. "Someone got into your house again, didn't they?" Lucas looked over at Rowan. "This time, it might be someone I invited in myself, and this little girl was the first one to catch it." Edith March arrived at exactly 5:12 p.m. in her old-fashioned, precise way, just like the pocket watch she always carried. Her vintage pickup truck turned onto the Pine Line Trail without honking, without music, without any announcement. Only a breeze slipped in through the cracked window and a pair of eyes that had seen more through rearview mirrors than Rowan's entire lifetime. She didn't knock, she simply walked in, left her dusty leather shoes by the entryway, unwrapped her gray wool scarf, and asked one question: "Herbal tea or hot cocoa?" Rowan burst into laughter. Lucas, standing behind the sofa, let out half a breath of relief. Edith, the Callahan family's former housekeeper, wasn't just the woman who made breakfast and tucked him in as a boy. She had been his mother's closest friend and, in her younger years, signal analyst for a special security force before taking early retirement after an incident no one ever discussed again. Lucas had always trusted her, but as his career soared, he'd pulled back, not because he didn't need her, but because he couldn't bear to let someone see through him again. And now, she had returned, no questions asked. They sat around the small wooden table in the library, where the fading light cast long amber streaks through the glass. Lucas laid out all the data Rowan had collected. Edith reviewed everything without surprise. "I've seen this model back when I was consulting in Munich. Microscopic devices, piggybacking off legitimate signal channels to avoid detection. This is no amateur job." She turned to Rowan. "How many emitters have you found?" "4, possibly 5. I need more time to confirm. I'm working on a noise filtering algorithm." Edith nodded, clearly impressed. This 8-year-old is about to outpace SecureVest's entire engineering department. Lucas let out a short laugh, his first in days, but it faded quickly as his face grew somber. She shouldn't have to deal with any of this. Edith placed her hand gently on his, but she did, and better than any of us. Rowan sat quietly at the tea table, notebook in hand. She didn't interrupt the grown-ups, just calmly wrote her thoughts down, the habit of someone who needed to systematize emotions to understand the world. That evening, the three of them inspected every corner of the house. Edith opened an old wooden box hidden beneath the staircase. Inside was a set of vintage devices for detecting heat and electromagnetic signals. Outdated, but still effective, she explained. Sometimes the simplest tools are the hardest to fool. These high-tech folks today put too much faith in software and forget it's the hardware that betrays us first. Lucas followed Rowan from room to room. For the first time, instead of saying, "Let me do it," he said, "You lead the way." Rowan brought up her pre-built signal map on a tablet. She didn't say much, just nodded when she confirmed a spot and marked in red where further checks were needed. Around 10 p.m., they found the fifth emitter, a chip embedded inside a decorative stone in the planter. Right next to Rowan's bed, Lucas's hands trembled with anger. "She planted it in your room too." But Rowan didn't show fear. She only said softly, "Because Clara knew you'd check your room first. She didn't think you'd check mine." And in that moment, Lucas realized this girl wasn't just highly intelligent. She saw through things more clearly than any adult who had ever betrayed him. After identifying all suspicious spots, Edith made a suggestion. "We can't destroy the devices yet. If we do, they'll know we've caught on. We have to keep them and bait them." Lucas looked at her. "You mean create a fake scenario?" "Exactly. We need to be clever. Make them believe Lucas Callahan is accidentally leaking a top-secret, unreleased technology. They'll bite. And when they do, we'll trace the signal. No warrants needed." Lucas turned to Rowan. "You in?" She didn't answer right away. Then she quietly nodded. "But I have one condition." "What is it?" "Once this is over, you have to teach me how to program an AI defense system. Stop calling me the kid." Lucas burst out laughing, this time for real. "Deal." Outside the window, the wind picked up. The sea wasn't as calm as it had been that morning, but inside the house, three people, unrelated by blood, from entirely different generations, sat around a small wooden table, plotting their counterattack. None of them were trained spies, just an extraordinarily gifted 8-year-old, a man once broken by betrayal, and a retired housekeeper who had refused to stay retired. But together they were exactly the kind of team their enemy would never see coming. Lucas hadn't returned to his bedroom in 3 straight nights. He slept in the library, the only room with thick walls, no cameras, no gifted items. And no one had ever stepped inside besides him and Rowan. Edith had said, "If you want to lure the enemy out, you have to let them believe you. Suspect nothing, and nothing sells that better than routine." So Lucas kept things normal. He let Clara visit for the weekend as usual. He replied to her texts sweetly. He told her he missed her, that he was working on a huge confidential project with the government. And he accidentally revealed a few classified details, of course. Everything was fake. Every phone call, every line of dialogue, every carefully planted expression. All were recorded by the camera hidden near the known surveillance devices. Each mock scenario was crafted meticulously, using his real voice, fake figures, and a completely fabricated financial model designed by none other than Rowan. Lucas had never imagined an 80-year-old could simulate an entire, advanced financial projection system in just 3 days. But then again, he had never imagined a child would be the first to uncover a spy in his own home. On the 4th day of the operation, Clara came by. She brought her usual homemade apple pie and a jar of scented candles. Lucas smiled as he took them. "You always remember I like cedar wood. I remember the important things, Lucas, including you." They sat on the sofa. Clara asked, "How's your upcoming project going? I've noticed you've been staying up late." Lucas played along, feigning hesitation, then said with just the right amount of clumsy vulnerability, "It's an algorithm still in testing. But if it works, it could encrypt financial transactions in a way no one's done before. It could even make governments dependent on our platform. Clara tilted her head. Sounds ambitious. Lucas chuckled. Don't tell anyone. Okay. She gave a soft laugh, resting her head on his shoulder. Tell who? I'm just your girlfriend, remember? From the reverse-angle camera tucked into the bookshelf, Edith and Rowan watched. No audio. Just video, but they didn't need sound. Clara's eyes said enough. That night, Lucas received a strange email from a disposable address. Thought you were smarter than this. Watch who's spying on who. DB Lucas froze .D.B. 2 letters. But it felt like a punch to the gut. Damon. Bryce. The co-founder of SecureVest. The college roommate who once shared a dorm bunk with. Lucas. The man who had built the foundation of the company beside him. 2 years ago, they had a falling out. A sharp, painful rift over direction. Damon had wanted to partner with defense contractors and monetize user data. Lucas refused. Damon left, taking with him his shares, his reputation, and a piece of their shared past no one ever dared to mention again. And now he was back. Not as a friend, but as the puppeteer behind the entire operation. Lucas printed the email and handed it to Edith and Rowan. Rowan frowned. He's trying to throw you off. Early warnings mean he's getting ready to act. Edith nodded, which means they've started harvesting. We need to stop this before they realize. The data is fake. Lucas nodded firmly. Then Phase 2 begins. Rowan pulled up the updated signal map. She pointed to a new source. The new signal isn't inside the house. It's coming from your car. And it only activates when you go see Clara. Lucas's brow furrowed. Rowan continued slowly. That means something's traveling with you outside the house. Could be your phone, or Edith cut in, smartwatch. Damon knows you never take it off. If Clara borrowed it, even just for a minute, that's enough time to plant a broadcasting module inside. Lucas looked down at his wrist, the watch he wore every day. Every meeting, every trip. He took it off and placed it on the table. For the first time, his eyes swam with the weight of betrayal. How long have I been carrying the enemy with me? Rowan's voice was soft, but you found it. That means it's not too late. The three of them sat in silence. Outside, rain began to fall. The soft patter on the windows, like a warning. Something was approaching. A storm or a turning point. Lucas was no longer the man shaken by suspicion. Now he was part of something. A team of three, a genius little girl. A woman who once walked away from the security world, and himself a man betrayed. Learning to rise again through trust, and this time he wasn't alone. That evening, everything seemed so normal, it was suspicious. Clara arrived in her familiar cream-colored sweater, holding a small box of cookies and wearing the warm smile of someone whose world hadn't changed at all. Lucas played his part flawlessly. He didn't mention Damon. No strange questions. Not a single glance of suspicion. You look tired, Clara said gently as she poured him tea. Just a lot on my plate lately. You know how cybersecurity never sleeps, Lucas replied. With a smile, Clara nodded, placing her hand over his. I'm always here if you need me. And in that very moment, while Lucas tried to keep his pulse steady upstairs, Rowan and Edith were monitoring every signal being transmitted out of the house. A custom-built router Rowan had assembled was blocking all real data, allowing only one file to leave the system, a decoy containing a simulation of a next-gen algorithm, a project that didn't actually exist. Clara had planted listening devices and was waiting. They knew, and this time they let her do it. 10:43 p.m. Rowan got the first ping. Signals transmitting. High speed. We're being hacked for fake data, she said, fingers flying over the keyboard. IP address, Edith asked. Prague, triple-layer encryption gateway. but I embedded a reverse cipher. That file is the bait, Rowan replied. With a faint smile, 10:51 p.m., Clara left the house. You should get some rest. I'll stop by tomorrow. I have a surprise for you, she said, kissing Lucas lightly on the cheek. Her demeanor, nothing short of a woman in love. Lucas closed the door behind her. A chill ran down his spine, not from the night air, but because he knew the woman he once nearly proposed to had just walked away with what she believed was a critical piece of intel. 11:06 p.m., Lucas entered the library, where Edith and Rowan were monitoring the network map. It's replicating, Rowan said. The fake data is being forwarded to a second location. Where? Lucas asked. Rowan zoomed in slowly on the map. Manhattan. Corporate registry office for a shell company called Orium Limited, registered under the name Damon. Bryce Lucas gripped the armrest of the chair. He really wants to ruin me. Not just you, Edith said calmly. He wants to prove nothing is safe, that no one can escape the reach of his invisible hand. 12:04 a.m., a self-destructing email appeared in Lucas's backup inbox. No subject, no greeting. I'm impressed. Third-tier encryption exceeded expectations. Too bad none of it will belong to you for long. You never should have turned down my offer. Lucas read the words, then gave a quiet laugh. A bitter, defiant kind of laugh. He turned his laptop screen toward Rowan. Show me the progress. Rowan opened a visual interface, simple but effective, displaying the response signals from the decoy file being transmitted. Inside, it was a digital Easter egg. A tracking code. Rowan had embedded herself a virtual data chip recording the entire path of the stolen file. In other words, they weren't just being hacked, they were tracing the hacker's retreat. 1:37 a.m., Rowan stood, stretching with her eyes still glued to the screen. I embedded a ping-back trigger. Within 24 hours, we'll have Orium Ltd's internal network map. And if we're lucky, even the database Damon's using to collect from other victims. Edith nodded, preparing another pot of tea. She didn't just set a mine, she left a footprint. We're going to find the snake's nest. Lucas sat down and leaned back. Exhausted, but for the first time in years, didn't feel like he was fighting alone. For a rare moment, the three of them, a man who had been betrayed, a girl with extraordinary intelligence, and a housekeeper who had quietly watched the world unravel, sat together in the very home that had been invaded. No one spoke, but they all knew the trap had closed, and this time, the prey had taken the bait. Clara vanished for the next 3 days. No texts, no calls, no black car parked along the curb like usual, and more importantly, no new signals leaving the house. Lucas didn't need Edith to say it out loud. She knows. Rowan nodded, or at least suspects. The decoy file was analyzed. The repeating pattern at the end must have tipped her or Damon off that something wasn't right. Edith calmly sipped her tea. People like Clara don't run. They step back to strike harder. And just as predicted, the next afternoon, Lucas received an urgent email from the Department of Trade Security. An anonymous complaint had been filed, triggering a federal inquiry. The accusation that SecureVest was concealing espionage technology and using customer data to build behavioral market control models. Lucas stared at the screen. This wasn't just a threat. This was flipping the board. If the investigation went public, every negotiation in progress would freeze. The market would panic. His reputation, 15 years in the making, would be gutted in a matter of days. Rowan scooted her chair closer, hands poised on the keyboard. You didn't do anything wrong, and I'm going to prove it. You don't have to do anything. This is an adult matter, Lucas said gently. But Rowan didn't look away. She stared straight at him, not angry, not scared, just sad. I was here when Clara walked in. I was the one who found the devices. And now, if I sit back, it means she wins. Lucas paused. She wasn't a child needing protection anymore. She was choosing to stand by him, not out of obligation, but belief. He nodded slowly. All right. But from now on, we do everything together. Their counterattack began. Rowan reconstructed the entire map of every signal Clara had ever transmitted. She used Clara's own data to model behavioral patterns, analyzing timestamps, transmission frequencies, and simulating emotional interaction. Logs taught the result. Clara hadn't just been recording. She had embedded voice and emotion sensors, powered by AI to learn Lucas's responses in different scenarios, building an emotional profile to predict and manipulate his reflexes. Lucas was stunned. He had always seen himself as an expert in behavioral maturity, never once realizing he had become the subject of psychological study. From the start, Rowan whispered, she didn't just want your data. She wanted to learn how to control you. That night, they uncovered something even more disturbing. Rowan detected a hidden code being transmitted not via Wi-Fi, not via Bluetooth, but through extremely low-frequency ELF signals emitted through a biological device. She implanted something on you, Rowan said. Maybe in your phone, but more likely in your watch. Lucas took off his watch and examined it again. Then, memory returned. Something Clara had once said in passing. Something that had seemed sweet at the time. You're always forgetting things. I embedded a tracker in your watch strap, just to ease my mind. He had laughed back then. You sound like my mom. That night, they dismantled the watch strap beneath the silicon. They found a paper-thin transmitter encrypted using a method only known to a few military research labs. Edith exhaled sharply. Damon isn't working alone. Who else? Lucas asked. Could be a network. Something much bigger. The next morning, Clara returned. No pie, no smile. Just a text. We need to talk. Alone. No devices. No one else. I'm giving you one last chance. Lucas archived the message, but he didn't delete it. Rowan glanced at the screen, then turned to him. Are you going? Lucas didn't answer right away, but then he said, yes, but not alone this time. You don't have to sit and wait anymore. Rowan looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes lit up in a truly childlike way. Not because of excitement, but because she was trusted as a real partner, as the morning sun poured through the windows. They began preparing for the meeting, not to reconcile, but to confront. Clara, Meow Shields, the woman who once stepped into Lucas's life with a disarming smile, was now bearing her final claws, and Lucas, once broken by betrayal, was stepping into battle again, not for revenge, but to protect what he had finally chosen to believe in again. The cafe was tucked into an old alleyway in Fremont. No regulars, no security cameras. A place one only found if told, and only knew if brought there. Clara chose the location. Lucas agreed. He walked in at exactly 9 a.m., not a second early, not a second late, just the way Clara used to like it. To the second, she was already seated, dressed in a black coat, hair pinned up neatly. On the table sat a single cup of black coffee. Untouched, Lucas took a seat. I'm here. Clara smiled, though the warmth was gone. It was the kind of smile that sliced, like the small fruit knife she casually twirled in her fingers. Didn't think you'd actually come? After everything, and you? Still think you're my girlfriend? She tilted her head. I didn't come to argue. I came with an offer. One last time. Lucas leaned back. Go ahead. Clara pulled out a silver USB drive from her purse. This is a full backup of Secure Vest's internal data, including the latest update you've been hiding. I haven't turned it in yet, but I will, unless you accept my terms. And those are Sell your shares to an anonymous investment group. Step down from the board. Cut off all contact with your technical team. Lucas gave a half smile. You think I'll do that out of fear? Clara tilted her head again. No, I know you're not afraid, but I also know you've been betrayed before. And I'm betting you don't want to be destroyed by the same mistake twice. Lucas nodded slowly. You're right about that. He pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Right then, a gray utility van parked outside lit up with full beams. Across from him, Clara flinched ever so slightly. Lucas leaned forward. You're not the only one watching. And I didn't come here alone. Upstairs in the cafe, Rowan sat beside Edith, listening in via earpiece. Edith was coordinating with a private cyberintelligence team Lucas had worked with years ago. All of it's being recorded. Rowan whispered. Voice, video, fingerprints. Edith nodded, but looked closely. Clara's playing a role. Rowan glanced up. What do you mean? She's not trembling. She's not panicked. She's shielding someone else. Downstairs, Lucas continued. Aren't you afraid it'll all come out? Clara sighed, and this time it felt real. Like the weariness of someone who knew the game was ending. I don't regret working for Damon, but I do regret thinking you wouldn't be smart enough to flip the board. Lucas looked her in the eye. Did you love me? She didn't answer immediately. 1 second, 2. Then, I thought I did. But Damon was right. You don't belong in our world. You still believe in people. We believe in winning. At that very moment, Rowan's device pinged urgently. She stared at the screen, going pale. Unauthorized access inside Secure Vest's internal network. IP trace shows Clara. No, it doesn't match. Edith leaned closer. Someone's using her identity. A diversion? Rowan typed rapidly, analyzing the data. Her expression darkened. The actual access point is from Lucas's office. Someone is inside. Back in the cafe, Lucas received a whisper through his earpiece. Edith's voice pulled back. She's the decoy. The real attack is happening now. Lucas looked at Clara. They're leaving you behind. You're just the pawn now. Clara gave a bitter smile. I know. I just wanted a few more minutes to say something. Lucas didn't move. Go ahead. Clara looked at him, this time with no more masks. If there's another life, don't choose me. I got so good at pretending that by the time I wanted to be really had no face left to show. Lucas left the cafe. Meanwhile, Edith had dispatched the security team to Secure Vest HQ, where Damon Bryce had broken in using old credentials, trying to steal the most critical intel, the government security client list. What he didn't know was that Rowan had swapped the entire database. 48 hours earlier, Lucas didn't wait for the arrest. He stood outside Secure Vest's building. In the cool night air of the city, Rowan stepped out of the car and walked up beside him. I'm sorry, I should have seen it sooner. No. Lucas cut her off, looking at her gently. If it weren't for you, I'd have nothing left to fight for. Rowan stayed silent for a moment. Then she looked up. Do you think Damon was ever really your friend? Lucas nodded softly. Yes, I do. But sometimes the one who walked beside you the longestest, the one who knows exactly how to bring you down. And for the first time, Lucas bent down and wrapped his arms around Rowan, not because she needed protection, but because he needed to know that someone, just one person, had stayed not for power, not for profit, but because they chose to believe. Asterisk. Damon Bryce wasn't arrested with sirens blaring. No helicopters, no FBI storming in, no chaos. He was taken in silence, in the basement of the old secondary Secure Vest headquarters, a building he thought he still had access to ever since his departure. He walked in. fully convinced he would retrieve a copy of the classified government client list, the kind of file worth tens of millions on the black market. What he didn't know, the entire database had been replaced with a simulation and buried beneath. The seemingly normal code was a digital identifier, triggering a reverse signal that sent his exact location to a private security task force coordinated by none other than Rowan Delaney. He was caught the moment his hand touched the server. No resistance, no emotion. He sat through a 3-hour interrogation without saying a word until the door opened, and in walked an 8-year-old girl, hair tied up neatly, wearing blue light glasses, carrying a laptop nearly as big as her torso. Damon scoffed. "Is this a joke?" Rowan sat down across from him. "No, it's the end. You think you've done something? You brought me in. A kid? No." Rowan typed a few keys. The screen lit up with surveillance footage. Damon meeting Clara at a charity event, recorded by a hidden camera. Then came an audio file, a conversation between him and a foreign finance executive discussing replacing Lucas Callahan. Finally, a handwritten code, one only Damon had ever used, exposed when he rerouted data through Clara's network. Rowan spoke calmly. "Every trace you left, I collected." Damon looked at her for the first time, his eyes no longer smug, but stunned. "Who are you? The one you thought was invisible? The flaw you didn't account for? The variable you didn't factor into your equation?" Rowan stood. "Oh, and one more thing. The crypto transfer you sent last night, I mirrored it. Your entire network of anonymous wallets is now frozen. You're bluffing? I'm 8. But I don't bluff." Lucas stood outside the interrogation room, watching through the one-way glass. He didn't feel proud. He felt relieved and a little sad. Rowan never should have had to fight this battle, but she hadn't just entered it. She won, not by destruction, not through revenge, but by exposing lies with nothing but truth. Edith stepped beside him. "She reminds me of my daughter when she was young." Lucas asked, "Do you regret letting her take the lead?" "No, but I would regret it if we didn't protect her now." Lucas nodded. I won't let her grow up in victory without peace." 1 week later, SecureVest publicly launched its new security protocol and, for the first time, introduced their honorary junior engineer Rowan Delaney. The media called her a prodigy. Lucas didn't like the word. He said, "Rowan's not a prodigy. She's a person who made a choice, and she chose to stand on the side of what's right." Damon was prosecuted. Clara received a reduced sentence for her cooperation. Neither of them ever returned to the tech world. Lucas was different. He continued to lead SecureVest, but now it wasn't just a company. It became a cybersecurity learning platform for children, an idea born from Rowan herself. They named it the Whisper Protocol, inspired by the first whisper on that fateful night. Later that evening, Lucas and Rowan sat together on the porch, watching the sea. "Uncle Lucas, what if one day I'm not as smart as I am now?" Lucas laughed gently. "Even better, because I don't need a genius. I just need a kid who gets to be herself." Rowan rested her head on his shoulder, and for the first time in her young life, everything felt still. Not because of the victory, not because of her IQ, but because she had finally found where she belonged. 1 year after the incident, Lucas moved offices, not into a sleek high-rise. No tight security, no underground access control. He chose an old red brick building on the outskirts of Suscree. One long-lasting. Why Suscree? One long last, Suscree. No Suscree. No Suscree. No Suscree. They Suscree. My Suscree. De bis it. I so Suscree it a coply sov so mot. We sicko to my moan lie so loud. It's ik bisakatu it aside to sigriga to kitsit to sit skakit kapid to bosit the guy it's it to the light pipe as and I did to this is as creatize as sat with its Ballard once a book printing warehouse. The ground floor was now a tea shop, a place he and Rowan often visited after school. Secure Vest now had two headquarters, one for engineers and one for students. Because Rowan once said, people shouldn't learn cybersecurity just to protect themselves. They should learn how to live without fear. Lucas also remodeled the house by the bay. He removed the excessive surveillance systems, took down the hidden cameras, uninstalled the fingerprint lock on his office. Rowan asked, "What about danger?" Lucas ruffled her hair. "Danger. It's real, but if we spend every moment bracing for it, we're not really living, are we?" Rowan grinned. "So from now on, you live. And I learn to play." In May, for the first time in her life, Rowan was invited to a regular summer camp. No circuit boards. No decoding, no keynote speeches, just ropes, forests, and iced lemonade. Lucas hesitated as he signed the consent form. He almost attached a tracker to her backpack, but stopped. He stared at the small print at the bottom. Parent, guardian, agrees not to interfere with the child's personal experience during camp. He exhaled and signed. Rowan looked at him, surprised. "You're really not tracking me?" "For the first time, and it's the first time I'm scared." "Me too, but I think I need to learn how to fall, if it happens." Edith was now the executive director of the Whisper Foundation, a nonprofit supporting tech-gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds. She still brewed tea, still told stories in that low, radio-like voice, but sometimes she'd just stand back and watch Lucas and Rowan quietly, as if remembering something she never fully told. One afternoon, she turned to Lucas and said, "You know, I once lost a niece. Brilliant girl, loved coding, but I was too busy working, too busy hiding, and I didn't make it back in time." Lucas didn't say a word, just sat with her, listening to the story no one else had heard. Edith didn't cry. She smiled softly. "Sadly, I don't want to be a gatekeeper anymore. I want to open the doors, let them go out and fall freely." Another evening, Rowan asked, "What if one day I don't want to do cybersecurity anymore? What if I want to open a bakery?" Lucas was gardening. He looked up. "I'll invest. You're not even going to ask why. Because whatever my daughter chooses, it's worth believing in." And that fall, they celebrated Rowan's 9th birthday at an old bus stop, decorated with balloons and homemade cake. No banners, no media. Just a man who once lived through algorithms, a little girl once viewed as a tool, and an older woman who had spent too long in the shadows. 3 people, 1 home, and a handwritten note on an old whiteboard. "Happy birthday, Rowan. Not because you're brilliant, but because you're real and you are enough. Your family." Lucas sat next to her as dusk fell, and the season's first raindrops began to fall. Rowan rubbed her eyes and whispered, "Uncle Lucas, yeah, one day I want to disappear, not because I'm scared, but because I just want a quiet life. Would that make you sad?" Lucas didn't answer right away. Then he said, "If you choose to disappear, I won't come looking. But I'll wait, right where you left me." Rowan smiled and fell asleep, in a house with no passcodes, no extra firewalls. 3 people once used to living in suspicion were learning all over again how to trust, not through algorithms, not through data, but through hot breakfasts, unlocked doors, and the simple words, "I trust you." One spring morning, Rohan woke up earlier than usual. Not because of school, not because of a test, but because she heard birds outside the window. And for the first time, Instead of turning on the sound scanner, she just listened. With her bare ears, Lucas had already made coffee. He didn't use a timer anymore. No scheduling, no Monday morning dashboards, just a morning in the truest sense. Sunlight filtering through the blinds, the smell of toasted bread, and Rowan's soft footsteps across the wooden floor. Not going anywhere today? Rowan asked. Lucas shook his head. Today is do-nothing day. Rowan laughed. That's a thing. Just made it up about 5 minutes ago. She reached for a slice of toast, sat down at the table, and looked out the window. So what do we do today? Wash the plant's hair, sunbathe with the cat, drink tea, and tell old stories. Lucas winked. They walked along the bay. Rowan brought a notebook, not to sketch network diagrams, but to write down things that were beautiful. A bird skimming over the water, a red sail, a dog with floppy ears. Lucas saw a small boat pulling in to shore, and instead of planning escape routes like he once would, for the first time he simply wondered, I wonder if they've got strawberry ice cream like the kind I used to love. That evening, Edith came over, carrying a box of old photographs. The three of them sat and looked through moments from over 20 years ago. Back when Lucas was still a student, when Edith wore a security uniform, when time hadn't yet made them forget. People aren't defined by their scars, but by the ones they choose to stay for. Rowan asked, So is it okay if I don't do anything big with my life? Lucas looked at her. If you live with kindness, you've already done something greater than most ever will. That summer, Rowan carved a wooden sign and hung it at the front of their house. The letters weren't sharp, not perfectly aligned, but they were clear. Welcome to the password-free zone. But free hugs available. This story doesn't end with a big ceremony. There are no standing ovations, just a quiet night. When Rowan was asleep, and Lucas walked into her room, not to check signals, not to scan for bugs, just to pull her blanket opened. Whisper, you don't need encrypting. You are real, and you are enough. In that world, trust didn't need firewalls. Love didn't need two-step verification, and people didn't need to be dangerous to feel safe, just kind, just present, and just willing to believe. Today's story reminds us that sometimes what breaks a person isn't an enemy, but someone who once walked beside them. And what saves us can come from the most unexpected place. A child, a whisper, a moment of being trusted. Rowan didn't save the world with power. She saved a man from the edge of doubt with sincerity, persistence, and a love that needed no encryption. Lucas didn't choose trust again, because everything became safe. He chose it because someone dared to stay, even when nothing was certain, and maybe. In a world of two-step verifications and triple-layered firewall swats, most worth keeping are the people we believe in, even when we don't have to. Thank you for staying until the very end. If this story touched something in you, leave us a note. Let Snail Story know where you're listening from and what you still believe in. And don't forget to like, subscribe, so we can meet again next week in another story that matters.